Sarah here with Cooking with the First Ladies for the National First Ladies Library. And today we are going to be, as Donkey would say on Shrek, making waffles for International Waffle Day. And also a few extra breakfast items to go along with them. Betty Ford, Florence Harding, and Jackie Kennedy all had waffle recipes. But it was Harry Truman who had a very interesting breakfast routine that I'll share. And also stick around to find out which First Lady supposedly had the best scrambled eggs. Also, for these recipes, you're going to need a waffle maker, but if you don't have one, you can actually get a small individual sized one for about $10 if you want to try these recipes. But first, earlier this month, former First Lady Michelle Obama debuted a new show on Netflix, which is perfect to watch while you eat waffles because it's called Waffles and Mochi, and it's a children's cooking show. This show is an extension of some of the work she was doing as First Lady, which was centered around healthy eating habits for children and improving meals in schools to make them more nutritious. So definitely check it out. So the First Lady we're going to talk about would often tell some reporters that she disliked cooking, but then share her famous waffle recipe. So before Girl Scouts raised money with cookies, they actually sold waffles. The Washington, D.C. Scouts operated a tea room, which was a very popular fad in the early 1920s, and the establishment was frequented by both the Hardings and the Coolidges. The toppings they served were a bit more traditional, while Warren Harding preferred to top his with chipped beef gravy. Now, Florence's waffle recipe was widely published in 1920, and it featured many ingredients that had been rationed during the war, and was also part of a national campaign known as Back to Normalcy. Harding promised a return to a simpler, less chaotic time. The Harding campaign focused on moving forward and having a steady order of things. However, not turning back the clock and restoration rather than radical change, as voters had come out of the years leading up to the 1920 election with the ending of World War I, a global flu pandemic, race riots, and labor strikes in cities across America. His victory was a landslide, the largest margin of success for any presidential candidate until that point in history. He is also the only president to have been elected on his birthday. Now, her waffle recipe actually includes sugar, which interestingly enough, she led a national boycott against the product when it became too expensive for regular households to afford. The waffles were known for being not too sweet and very fluffy. The waffles call for 2 eggs, 2 tablespoons of sugar, a teaspoon of salt, 2 tablespoons melted butter, a pint of milk, and about 2 cups of flour to thin out the batter, and 2 large teaspoons of baking powder. So first, we're going to separate the eggs. You're going to beat the yolks and add in the sugar and salt. Then add butter, milk, and flour. Then stir that to combine. Next, beat the egg whites in a mixer until stiff peaks form. Make sure it doesn't get too dry, but then stir in 1 spoonful of whites and to lighten, and then just continuously do that until all of your egg whites are incorporated. Finally, bake it in a waffle iron. It usually takes about 4 to 5 minutes to cook thoroughly. So here you have Florence Harding's waffles. Now let's talk a little about Betty Ford, who was a very outspoken but very beloved First Lady. She was the most candid First Lady ever and was vocal about topics that many people didn't discuss in public at that time, including her substance abuse and her breast cancer diagnosis. She removed the stigma because of her conversations about her diagnosis and brought cancer out of the shadows. Betty was very into pop culture and not only learned disco steps, but wore a mood ring. She also had a CB radio license with the handle First Mama and was the First Lady to appear on a sitcom when she guest starred on the Mary Tyler Moore Show. She was actually more popular than her husband, and there was a popular pin at the time that said, "I'm for Betty's husband." She and her family liked very budget-friendly as well as simple foods. Sunday breakfast included waffles, maple syrup, strawberries, and orange juice. So to make Betty's waffles, take 1/4 cup of cake flour, 3 teaspoons of baking powder, 1/2 teaspoon of salt, and 2 tablespoons of powdered sugar. Now in a separate bowl, mix together 1½ cups of milk, 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla extract, 3 egg yolks, and 5 tablespoons of melted butter. So using a spatula, make a kind of a well in the center of the flour and add the wet ingredients to the dry and mix. Next, in a separate bowl, mix together 3 egg whites, and then you're also going to beat those until they're stiff and fold them into the batter as well. Finally, cook on your waffle maker and top that with strawberries and sour cream. Now, our next First Lady is Jackie Kennedy. Jackie and JFK, who were frequently asked to submit favorite recipes from their family, one of which was most frequently shared was that of a waffle recipe that had actually circulated since his time as a U.S. Senator. Versions of this really eggy waffle recipe was said to be JFK's favorite and was published several times alongside the recipe, and it was often said Jackie frequently made these for her children and her husband. The recipe did come from the Kennedy family, but what is really unknown is exactly where it came from and who the actual cook is behind it. But because of Jackie's relatively strict diet, she probably didn't actually eat the waffles herself. She allegedly made really good waffles, but because there are several that are associated with her in different cookbooks, some have been described as not being the best. One of the unique features is not only the whipped egg whites, but also the baking powder, which was kind of an innovative technique when including in waffle recipes. So to make the Kennedy's waffles, first whip the egg whites into stiff peaks so that they can hold their own shape, and set that aside. Next, cream a half a cup of butter and 1 tablespoon of sugar, and add the 2 beaten egg yolks into the batter slowly and gently fold them together. When most of them seem absorbed, add the rest and mix them in, but don't overmix. Next, we add in 1 cup of cake flour, 1 cup of buttermilk, and a pinch of salt. Next, slowly again fold those beaten egg whites into the mix, and then add 4 teaspoons of baking powder. It should be really fluffy and very thick batter. Finally, again, cook in your waffle maker, and they enjoy topping theirs with melted butter and syrup. Let's also make a little extra breakfast foods to go along with our waffles. Bess Truman's husband, Harry S. Truman, had quite the breakfast routine. Harry would start most days at 5 a.m. with a shot of bourbon, Old Granddad specifically, which he claimed got the engine running. The story goes that Truman's favorite cocktail was an old-fashioned, but humorously sans the bitters, sugar, citrus, or the maraschino cherry. He would also have an egg, a slice of toast, a slice of bacon, and a glass of skim milk. However, even though Bess wasn't necessarily known for her recipes for breakfast foods, Eleanor Roosevelt was with her famous scrambled eggs. Mrs. Roosevelt was down to earth in the White House kitchen. She prided herself on coming up with the 7.5-cent meals that were more appropriate during the Great Depression. She was also known to whip up her own scrambled eggs, which she and FDR thoroughly enjoyed. So in order to make Eleanor's scrambled eggs, which were prepared frequently again for former President FDR, you're going to take 1 3-ounce package of cream cheese and mash it into a frying pan. Next, add a half a cup of cream or milk and heat until the cheese is melty and bubbly. Then break 6 eggs into a bowl and beat them with a fork and add them with a little bit of salt and pepper. Finally, just mix into that cheesy mix in the frying pan and cook on low heats. While cooking, constantly stir and scrape, and they're finished when they're very creamy, such as this. So lastly, we won't be making them today, but another great addition to any breakfast is grits, and who better to take a recipe from than Rosalind Carter. She had an excellent cheese grits recipe. So make sure and register for next month's live program, Rosalind Carter in the Rockin' 70s with me, to learn more about her alongside some groovy 1970s vibes and learn a few of her recipes as well. So you can register for that on the National First Ladies Library page. As you can see, we have Florence Harding's waffles, Betty Ford's waffles with sour cream and strawberries, Jackie Kennedy's fluffy waffles with butter and syrup, as well as Eleanor Roosevelt's very fluffy, very creamy scrambled eggs. So thanks y'all so much for watching, and don't forget to check the social media as well as YouTube on the National First Ladies Library for more. And also you can follow along with me on Instagram at Cooking with the First Ladies. So thanks y'all so much, and let us know which waffle recipe is your favorite. See you next time.